It's easy to get lost in all the noise and tech lately. If you can't get the message across clearly, people won't follow. Today, we're chatting about why being easy to understand is actually your biggest advantage right now. Welcome back to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya, and today we're looking into something that sits at the very heart of how we lead and how we grow and the way that we communicate. We often think that the best idea wins, but the truth is the clearest idea wins. Today, I'm talking with Danny, who's learned that lesson the hard way. Danny Brassell is a world-class speaker and coach who helps leaders and entrepreneurs find their edge through the power of story. He has a deep background in education and leadership development. Most powerful lessons came from the massive life shift. After losing everything in a real estate scam, he had to rebuild from the ground up. That experience showed him that having a great idea is only half the battle. If you can't communicate that idea clearly, it will never find traction that it deserves. Today, he is known for his one problem, one action rule, which he helps professionals cut through the noise and inspire real movement. He specializes in turning personal setbacks and complex business ideas into clear, compelling narrative that build trust and drive results. Danny, it's really great to have you on the Champion Mindset Collective. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Anthony. More importantly, thanks for being so accommodating of me. You're such a kind soul, and thanks for spreading some joy around the world, my friend. We need a lot more of you.
100%. Thank you so much. Appreciate your sentiment. Danny, let's go back to your journey in life from childhood. Take us back. How did you get here?
Well, if I was going to write an autobiography, Anthony, I'd probably call it Pivots because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily. And one editor offered me the city beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So, Anthony, I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay. And I actually fell in love with teaching. I've taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, like you said. And we lost everything financially. And I could give you the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from that experience. First of all, I learned that my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer and she stood right by me. She's an incredible human being. Second of all, I learned that money's not everything, Anthony, because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people because if I was somebody who saw what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize unless you know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess. It took a catastrophe, but the more I read my Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And fifth, and probably most applicably to your podcast today, I didn't want to file bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to earn this much more money this year. And so I started speaking on the side and I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, Anthony, he gave me a much higher number and I get that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically during one of the worst economic downturns in world history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually attracted the attention of some pretty famous people and companies who were asking me to coach them. And I have to admit, I really resisted coaching for a long time, Anthony, because you need to know this about me. I am obsessive compulsive. I will not let you fail. I will back holding you accountable until you succeed. Well, like you said, now that I work primarily with entrepreneurs and business owners and executives that pay me a lot of money, I find they're highly motivated. They do the work, and it's been some of the most rewarding and gratifying work I've ever done. So you can take me down whichever path you choose, my friend.
Wow, what a journey. I love that no matter what target you set, you always achieved it. And your wife sticking by even through the challenges of the scam and everything. This is a common story that I'm hearing. In the last 2 or 3 episodes that I've done, I've had people who have said they lost everything or they lost their job or they had no income, but they stepped up and they took a responsibility for themselves as champions do. So, yeah, I take my hat off to you and say, well done on
Thank
doing
you.
that. Danny, you went through a massive turning point when you lost everything with the real estate scam. I'd love to go back to that moment and hear what was that like for you?
It stunk. I don't encourage anybody to bottom out like that. It was miserable, but like you said, I can either gripe about it or I can do something about it. I'm a husband and I'm a father, and I consider myself the provider for my family. I'm like, I have to provide. And so I was very aggressive in setting up my speaking business. When I first started off, it was funny because even today, even if I speak for free, I always have a contract with whoever I speak for. And so when I first started speaking, I was always speaking for free. And in my contract, it would say something like, I will waive my $5,000 speaking fee. I wasn't making $5,000 an hour, but they didn't know that. And I put in exchange for, and I had 10 items on the list. It would be like, A, I want a video testimonial from your organization's president. B, I want 3 written testimonials from people in your audience. C, if you're videotaping me, I want a copy of the videotape. D, I'd like referrals to 2 other organizations that could use my services. E, if you have a monthly newsletter, I want to write a column for the next year. I don't remember all 10 of them, but it was like these 10 items. And I was hoping that people would do at least one. Well, everybody did at least one, and some did all 10. And so in a very
Wow.
quick time, I had hundreds of testimonials. I had referrals to different organizations. I had videos. It's kind of like I'm working with a woman right now, and she wants to be a $10,000 an hour speaker. And the question I asked her, Anthony, is, well, do you look like a $10,000 an hour speaker? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you have a website? She's like, no. Do you have a speaking reel? No. Do you have video testimonials? No. Do you have a brochure? No. Let me ask you a question. Do you look like a $10,000 an hour speaker? And I'm not putting her down. I said, we're going to get you there, but you have to look the part. If you're going to sit here and say I'm a $10,000 an hour speaker and you weren't on Love Island or something, you're not a celebrity. You have to show people that you're worth it. And it's kind of an odd example because most of the people I work with are not speakers. So they either don't want to speak or they're actually horrified of speaking. And I'm helping them use stages as a way to grow their business.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be that person because if you're not visible, and if you're not showing up as that's what you're doing, then people are not going to hire you. So yeah, that is one of my aspirations, is to be a speaker as well. And I've
Yeah.
started doing the
Hey, Anthony, I think you're doing a great job. I think you're a wonderful human. I mean, that's you're the kind of person I like to work with, Anthony, because I have a rule. It's a no jerk rule. I like to work with kind, good beings, and you're spreading goodness
yeah,
around. We need to hear your
yeah.
voice.
Thank you. I woke up at 2 a.m. on Sunday morning to attend the speaking for global speakers talk, and just showed up and did it. And at first I was like, oh, gotta get up at 2 in the morning. But then once I did it, I was like, I really enjoyed that, you know,
Yeah,
and I've got potentially 4 other podcast guests out of that as well.
great. I love it.
Yeah. Now, in that moment of what the adversity you were going through, what was going through your head?
Well, definitely fear, darkness. It was a good experience for me, Anthony, because it humbled me and I needed a good dose of humility. It made me a more empathetic person, which was important. It made me hustle, like you, how many people could have just slept and not made that speaking competition? You got up at 2 in the morning. It's kind of like your podcast. I mean, how many of your friends are telling you, "Hey, I want to do a podcast," and all they do is talk, quack, 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 and they don't do anything. And I don't want to be around people that don't like doing things. I've always been a person that's going 110 miles an hour. A
Mm,
lot of people say ready, set, fire, but most people, they're ready, set, set, and they don't do anything. I'm kind of more like fire. Just go for it. Yeah. You and I both know that perfection is the enemy of progress. Like your podcast is a perfect example. I guarantee you the first time you did the podcast, it stunk. And the second time you did the podcast, it stunk, but it didn't stink as bad as the first time. And now you've been doing it for a while. It's becoming this
yeah.
finely machine. Speaking is a skill. You can learn how to do it. And even the people that I work with that are terrified of speaking, it's very heartwarming to watch them as they progress into much more confident speakers.
Yeah. I still remember the first trailer episode I did. I still cringe when I listen to that one. Although, there was a saying that most podcasters who go into podcasting give up after 7 episodes, right? There's a
Wow.
high rate of people that give up. And so for me, I was like, well, I'm going to do the first 10 episodes and then I'm good. And then I'm just going to keep that momentum and consistency up. So there were times where I went through challenges and adversities in my life, and I was like, I don't really want to do a podcast today, but I still showed up. And as of tomorrow, I'll be at 217 episodes in 2.5 years. Up until now, I've been doing like 2 episodes a week. Now I'm upping the game to 3 episodes a week. So yeah, it's you just got to you just keep going and doing what you, especially if it's something that you love and that you really, then you're going to give it everything you've got. What I find interesting is how you turn that pain into a message. How do you think our setbacks actually help us connect more deeply with people?
Well, I mean, it's probably the first strategy I share with everybody I work with, Anthony, is stop bragging. You stop talking about your successes. Start talking about your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you share your own failures, the more that your audience is going to see themselves in you, and that's ultimately what you're trying to do in any presentation, is to connect with the audience. Now, I'm a little bit different. I have my company is called Well Crafted Story. I co-founded it with Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson and Dave Ward. I call us the professor, the performer, and the producer, because my background's academia. Coach Jimmy was a Broadway actor, and Dave's an attorney. And when we're working with people, we're always saying, it's, you got to get in your reps. And I think what really sets us apart is a lot of these so-called speaking coaches. They say, well, the way you're really going to connect with your audience is you got to talk about that pain, pain, pain. And there's three reasons why I don't really like that approach, Anthony. First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad stuff happen to them. I don't think we need more sad stories. I think we need more hope and hopeful and uplifting stories. Second of all, what Coach Jimmy Dave and I are doing with our clients is we're teaching you how to create what we call a well-crafted story. Politicians would call it a stump speech. I've heard people call it a signature talk. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't matter what you call it. What this is a presentation that you're going to deliver again and again. It's going to be so ingrained in your head. It's going to be like the Lord's Prayer or your Pledge of Allegiance, your national anthem. You're not going to have to think about it. I mean, do you really want to tell the story again and again of the worst moment of your life? I mean, I have a friend, his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's delivered that speech over 1,000 times. I mean, you got to be a lot stronger than me to talk about the worst day of your life again. And I mean, I talk about the real estate thing, but I've been able to, it's 20 years removed and there's a happy ending. And I'm not in it. It's one of the things people have to understand. You can talk about that painful point, but not when you're still in it. If you're still in it, then it's just making everybody uncomfortable. And
Yeah,
third, and this is where people get angry with me, I have one basic objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I think there's something admirable about that as a basic objective for my audience. I find that the people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling it, now those are crocodile tears and they're manipulating their audience. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales technique. It's actually a very effective sales technique. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower when I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are ethical ways to get people to want to do business with you. I'm not going to do sob stories to try and gain sympathy from you. And so and the research backs me up. I'm always a research driven person. And all you have to do is look at the movie Monsters, Inc. And in Monsters, Inc., they demonstrate the power of laughter is much more powerful than the power of fear. And I just don't
mm,
like the scare tactics and the sad tactics that I see a lot of people bringing to stages.
yeah, 100% agree with you there. I agree that if you're in the midst of whatever adversity you're going through, or the pain is not to talk about it, but heal through it first, and let go of it. Then you can talk as an experience and then be able to provide tools to help people who are going through that as well. Yeah,
Indeed.
I often talk about the restructures and redundancies, but I'm not tied to that anymore because my identity has changed. I'm a different version of myself,
Yeah.
and so I can go, "Oh, this happened, but this is what I did," And so, yeah, absolutely. Now, why is honesty more effective than being perfectly polished?
Well, I don't think, unless you're Jesus Christ, none of us are perfectly polished. I think people, that's how you're going to relate to them. Is I was once introduced for an event, and the organizer, she asked me, how do you want to be introduced? I'm like, okay, here's how I want to be introduced. Was on Christmas Eve, this was a long time ago, my oldest daughter was only 1, but she decided to swallow a penny on Christmas Eve, and my wife was horrified. She's like, oh, we got to take her to the emergency room. I'm like, no, 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 she'll just poop it out in a couple of days. And she calls like the poison control center, and they say, oh, you have to take her to the emergency room. So Anthony, we have to go to the emergency room on Christmas Eve, and it's great. I still have the x-ray. You see this body that's like moving, but there's a very distinct circle in her tummy. And what did the hospital say? They said, well, she'll poop it out in a couple of days. But I had to spend all the Christmas Eve at the emergency room. And so every day I had to go through every single one of Kate's diapers looking for the dang penny. And about 5 days later, she pooped it out. And I told my wife, I'm like, oh, she pooped out the penny. And my wife's like, well, where's the penny? I'm like, I threw it away with the diaper. And she's like, we need that. That's like a keepsake. I had to go through the diaper bin, through all these dirty diapers to find the dang penny. And here's the great thing. So I have myself introduced that way at the event. And a woman in the front row, she's like, why didn't you just give your wife a different penny? And my jaw dropped, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my wife has trained me so well. The thought of launching her didn't even cross my mind. Right. Those are stories, Anthony. I mean, I'm working with a guy right now, very successful businessman from Saudi Arabia. The guy has climbed the highest peak on all 7 continents. He swam with sharks in Madagascar. He did the Iditarod in Alaska. And I look at him, I'm like, nobody in your audience can relate to you. Nobody in your audience has climbed Mount Everest. But I guarantee you, everybody in your audience peed their pants when they were 6 years old. That's a connection story. All of us have had those silly parenting stories, or the dumb argument with a spouse story or something. And it's showing you that you're a real person. I think in this age of AI, we need a lot more authentic intelligence instead of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And that leads me on to my next question. We live in this world of AI. It can generate thousands of ideas in a minute. But you talk about the clarity, and I love this bit because a lot of business owners are coming up to me and saying, what tool should I use? And I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. Go away. And they're like, what? I said, I'm not coming to talk to you about tools. I'm going to talk about your business and how you can embrace AI, and where are the bottlenecks? Where are you being a bottleneck in your business, right? And they look at me a different way. So there's, in this world of AI, we can generate thousands of ideas in a minute. But you talk about the clarity being a real multiplier of innovation. So why is one clear message more powerful than hundreds of smart ideas?
Yeah, I think what's important in storytelling is there's a difference between good speakers and great speakers. Good speakers tell stories, great speakers tell stories with intention. So here's an exercise, everybody in your audience, and you can do this also, Anthony. Is later on, sit in a comfortable chair with a pen and paper, libation of choice, and for an hour, I want you to write down every story that's ever happened in your life. And I don't mean the entire story; I just mean triggers, like the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco, the time Dad spilt mustard on his tie when we went to that fancy restaurant. You'll find in an hour you can come up with hundreds of stories like this. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise is then I want you to think about, what's this story really about? This is a story about never giving up. This is a story about priorities. Oh, this is a story about teamwork. And so on my computer, Anthony, I literally have hundreds of folders filled with tens of thousands of stories. And so when I'm developing a presentation, I want my audience to have a certain emotional reaction or understand a specific metaphorical point. I have a story that can go along with it. And don't get me wrong, I think AI is fantastic. AI can generate lots of great ideas. It's a tool, though. And when people depend on AI, that's when there's a problem. It's a great assistant, but I wouldn't use it as I mean, for one, they lie to you all the time. It's unbelievable to me. I'm like, but actually, it's not unbelievable to me because humans developed AI. So, of course, it would learn how to lie if it was developed by humans.
Well, our brains lie to us. Our brain deletes, distorts, and generalizes information. So there we go. It's basically a mirror of who we are, right?
Mhm.
Because we, like you said, we developed it. Interesting. I'm in the process of starting to write a book. I think I might have shared this with you on the Discovery call. Was that I want to write a book for each season of the episode. of this podcast. And, each guest would be part of that book. So I thought, well, I'm not one to sit down and write on paper. I'm definitely someone who likes to type. So also, if I've already got these stories, these episodes that I've created, how can I draw on this bank of information and then be able to pull that into a chapter? So what I developed is as a way of being able to go into previous episodes and look at different aspects, like it could be frameworks, it could be a problem, it could be, and actually then be able to go, oh, from this chapter, that's a relevant story. I'm going to pull that in. And so I've developed this thing so what I'm doing is I'm using AI to help me and automation to help me actually repurpose content that I've already got and add that into the book. Now, those aren't made up stories. Those are statements that people have actually made on this podcast. But all I'm doing is actually, instead of trying to memorize it all in my head, I'm drawing it from the episode pages that are already there. So it's you know, yeah,
There's it's brilliant on different levels, Anthony. I mean, if you look at Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, when they were trying to get Chicken Soup for the Soul published, they were rejected over 140 times. But I always thought, man, what a smart book. What they did is they have a couple of their own personal stories, but what they did is they collected stories from all these people. And so think about that in terms of marketing. Now, when you're marketing the book, well, at least you're going to sell 100 copies because you got their stories. And I bet you every single one of those people is going to tell at least one other person to buy it. And you can have
100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
you get a huge multiplier effect. And I mean, like what you're doing with the AI is what you're doing is having the AI, okay, here's everything I got. Can you organize this in a more coherent fashion that would be more enjoyable to the reader? I think it's brilliant. I think you're right on
yeah.
track.
And it also gives me the opportunity to then look at synergies or themes where previous guests have been talking about a specific topic, and I can bring those people back and have a panel discussion. There's a whole lot of ideas in my head, which I'll be calling you back at some point after this episode to say, hey, come and join us on this. How do we avoid being the bottleneck in our own communication?
Well, I'll just take you through the process. So you have to forgive me. I'm a former teacher, so everything I do either rhymes or it's alliterative. And so, well-crafted story, we call it our 5 C's framework. And so, before you put together any of your presentation, you need clarity. There are 2 questions you have to ask yourself: who is your audience, and what is the problem that you solve? Once you have very succinct, clear answers on both of those questions, and then we can develop your talk, which is to connect with your audience, teach meaningful content that serves them, have one clear call to action, and finally have an emotional close that prompts people to jump out of their seats to work with you. If you can do all of those things in a presentation, you're going to have a much higher conversion.
Yeah, like that. What happens when a business leader lacks that clarity?
It's in the Bible, where there is no vision, people perish. You need to be very clear about. One of my favorite stories was Steve Jobs when he returned to Apple in 1997, was developing the new Macs. He had 5 things he wanted to advertise that the new Mac could do. And Lee Clow was a good friend of his advertising person. And Lee Clow is the guy that developed the 1984 Super Bowl ad that was so famous, dystopian society. And I love what Lee Cloud did is he crumbled up 5 pieces of paper and he said, "Steve, catch." And Steve couldn't catch any of the pieces of paper. And Lee looked at him and he said, "That's a bad ad." Then he crumbled up 1 piece of paper. He's like, "Catch." And Steve caught it. He's like, "That's a good ad." Make sure to be clear. People can't remember so many things. You have to have one clear idea. I'm such a believer in that concept. I was on a podcast the other day, and the hostess at the end of the podcast, she said, "I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review." We got off air. I said, "You just asked your audience to do 3 different things. They're not going to do any of them because, again, former teacher, everything I do rhymes or it's alliterative. Choices confuse and cause you to lose. You can't give people multiple options. You got to make the decision for them, or otherwise, people's brains, this is just human nature, will shut off because it's information overload. They don't want to make a decision. So you need to make the decision for them and guide them toward that decision.
Yeah, 100%. That's given me food for thought. And to make sure that when I end this episode, that I give a clear call to action. Okay, let's talk about the one problem, one action rule. Could you explain how that works for someone who feels like they have too much to say?
This is why your clarity is so important. Who is your audience and what is the problem that you solve? So I have like 50 different types of presentations. My call to action for corporate executives is very different than elementary school teachers, which is very different than little kids. I know exactly who my audience is, and I know I have one specific thing that I want to solve for them. Like Elon Musk, when he gives a presentation for Tesla, he's also not advertising SpaceX and Solar City and PayPal and all these other things. No, he's very focused in. This is what we're doing. This is, and even at his presentations, he's not showing lots of different types of vehicles. He's like, this is the vehicle we have. This one. This is the one. He's making it a very clear argument. Watch politicians. I mean, if a politician is giving a speech and they're saying you should vote for me, you should also contribute to my campaign. Well, you're given two options, and now we don't understand what this presentation is about. Just have one. Okay, this talk is the talk I give when I want to fundraise, and this talk is the one when I'm going to ask people for their vote. And you'd be amazed how few people actually can grasp this basic concept. Jack Welch, when he was running GE, he got rid of all the divisions that weren't either number one or two in their category. He says, we got too many things. We got to focus. You can't all be Walmart. If you try and appease everybody, you're going to appease nobody. And now you can always broaden your audience. John Maxwell is one of my favorite speakers, one of the most gifted speakers on the planet. He started off as a Christian minister, and so what did he do? He spoke to Christian ministers, and then he expanded his audience to Christians, and then he wrote books on leadership skills. So he broadened it to leadership skills and then communication skills, and now he's applicable for just about anybody. But he didn't
Yeah,
start that way. He started off with a very specific niche. Smart.
yeah, absolutely. How do we stop overcomplicating things? People listening to this, they'll be going, okay, Danny, I'm hearing what you're saying, but how do I actually get into a state of stop to overcomplicate the things that I'm doing?
Yeah, so right now we're working with a woman. She's one of the top nutrition experts on the planet. Now, I never tell anybody who we work with. All you have to do, maybe it's because of his Broadway background. My co-founder Jimmy, he'll name drop 20 people in the first sentence. I believe in discretion. So we're working with this woman, and she's a dietary expert. And she was ending her presentation. She's like, enroll in my 90-day coaching program for only 1997. And she ended. I'm like, whoa, 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 big mistake. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have to understand there's two types of people in your audience. And I'm going to be stereotypical and call them the husband and the wife. So the husband, he's the person I call Joe Friday. He's the guy in the audience with his arms crossed, looking skeptically at you the whole time, like, who are you? What are you selling me? How much does it cost? What do I got to do? And a well-crafted presentation addresses all of Joe Friday's questions. But Dr. Kathy, she was making a big mistake. She was ending with Joe Friday. I'm like, wait, you're ignoring the wife. The wife is who I call Julia Roberts. She doesn't care how much it costs. She just wants to feel good. She's emotionally driven. I always listen to Anthony's podcast because it's like my long lost brother. I learn all the time. And by ending with just her offer, she was ignoring potentially 50% of her audience. And so she asked me, what can we do? I'm like, well, what do you want the audience to do? She's like, buy my program. I'm like, yes, I know you want them to buy your man, it's so dense. Like some people, we went back and forth for 5 minutes and finally she let it slip. She's like, I want them to understand they can't do this alone. You need to hire an expert story. She's like, what's that? I'm like, I'll give you an example. I'll leave you all with this. Many years ago, my wife and I, we got theater tickets. We were dressed to the nines, driving to the theater, and we got a flat tire. And my wife said, well, I'll call AAA and get us a tow truck. I'm like, you don't have to call AAA. I'm a man. I can fix a flat tire. Got out of the car and I opened up the trunk and I got the spare tire and then I got the pumper thing and I got the big jack thing and started trying to take the nuts out of the tire. And basically, 27 minutes later, I had grease all over me. I had not fixed the flat tire. I look up. My wife is standing beside the car with her arms crossed, shaking her head with an expression like I could have done so much better than this guy as a husband. Well, unbeknownst to me, she had called AAA 27 minutes earlier. And this tow truck shows up, and this 17-year-old punk kid hops out of the tow truck and proceeds to fix my flat tire in 3 minutes flat. I think there are times in life when all of us think we can do it on our own, but if you want to save time, you want to save money, you want to save a whole lot of headache and embarrassment, you hire an expert. And so now what I've shown Dr. Kathy is here's how we've taken a story that seems unrelated to what you're trying to do, but what it is, it's a metaphor which is going to trigger in people's brains in the audience. I tried lots of diets in the past and none of them seemed to work, but Dr. Kathy, she seems to know her stuff. And that's what we're trying to do to increase that conversion rate. I mean, when we have clients that say they got standing ovations, we're like, that's great. Or they tell us that people think they're wonderful speakers. We always applaud them, but there's only one way I evaluate your effectiveness as a speaker. How many people in your audience decide to take the next step with you? Now, it can be an unpaid next step, like subscribe to my podcast or vote for me. More typically with our clients, it's a paid next step, like buy my product or invest in my coaching program. We want to move hearts, but we also want to move the needle because you're running a business.
Yeah, I love that. Love that story. It makes so much sense. I'm learning so much through just listening to this. It's great because when I do the editing, I actually get to listen to the whole episode and I take that in for the second time. A lot of leaders rely on data to make their point, but you suggest that the stories build trust much faster. So why do you think our brains are wired that way?
Of all people, it was Joseph Stalin who said a million dead is a statistic. One person dead is a tragedy. Translation: facts tell, but stories sell. Facts inform, stories transform. We've been doing a lot of business with financial services companies, and I worked with one company on their presentation, and it was all numbers based on retirement seminars, and it was all these. And I'm like, we're getting rid of all of that. Literally now, their presentation, instead of being an hour and 15 minutes, the presentation's 45 minutes. There's not a single number used in the presentation, and they tripled their appointment bookings just from that one
Mm,
change. We had a guy, Richard. So Richard used to start off his presentation. My name is Richard. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I've made over $1 billion for my clients. I work with this famous person, this famous person. I said, Richard, time out. It's all right to brag, but you're doing it in the wrong part of your presentation. So we changed his opening. So he talks about the very first client he booked 30 years ago. And it's just this it's this hilarious comedy of errors. I have no idea why a person invested a dime in Richard, but Richard noticed it immediately. So the way Richard gets clients is he does these dinner seminars twice a week at a steakhouse for about 15 retired couples in their 50s and 60s. And so again, this is why it's important to be clear who's your audience and what's the problem you're solving. You need to know your numbers. And so he had about 15 people in a typical, well, 15 couples in a typical audience. Of the 15 couples, he was only getting about 4 or 5 of them to sign up for his appointment. And of the 4 or 5 appointments, only one person would actually become a client. All we did is we took away the numbers and made it all stories. And he's now, of the 15 couples, 12 of them are booking the appointment. Of the 12, 7 of them are booking him as their financial advisor. I mean, 7 times. I think that was money well spent by Richard. But it
mm,
sounds counterintuitive. People, all of us want to show off how smart we are, but I don't think that's really what connects with people. People don't care how smart you are. People are emotionally driven, Anthony. This is why the Julia Roberts thing is so important. I mean, if all of us
mm.
were logic based, we'd all be driving like Saabs and Subarus and Volvos, like the safest cars in the world. But instead, we get monster trucks and sports cars and things because instead of eating a healthy diet, we're like, yeah, but I'm going to eat all this fast food because that's what turns me on. I mean, all of us are emotionally triggered. And so that's what you're really trying to do in any presentation. So the leaders that think that the numbers are what are going to impress people, I and I hate to use politicians as examples because everybody freaks out with politics. This has nothing to do with the politics. President Reagan, when he was president of the United States, he was the very first president that during the State of the Union address, rather than talking about healthcare as an issue, he'd say it's like Anthony. Anthony, stand up, and you stand up in the gallery and wave to everybody. Anthony works at the GM plant in Louisville, Kentucky. And a month ago, he got hurt on the job and he had a decision to make. Do I go to the hospital or do I pay my rent? Well, now what he's expertly done is when people are thinking healthcare, they're like, wait a second, I remember Anthony had a healthcare problem. And every president since Reagan now, when they give the State of the Union address, they got like 9 different people. So every time they have an issue, well, let me, here's immigration. There's this person up there. I mean, they all do it. But that's the power of storytelling, is what can you do to get people to visualize it in their minds?
Yeah. Yeah. This is great. I'm learning lots from this chat. Is there a way that data and emotion can actually work together?
Sure. I mean, you can get, but never make the data that, what I'm really good at is taking your meaningless numbers and turning them into meaningful narratives. We're working with a Silicon Valley firm right now, bunch of engineers, and you and I know that engineers are very introverted. They're not exactly outgoing. And so the chief engineer, they're doing a venture capital raising, and the chief engineer is the nicest Indian guy, and he's like, Danny, please, you have to make me interesting so these people will listen to me. And so what I did with him is he has a very difficult name to pronounce, and so all we did to change his pitch, which is only a 12-minute pitch, is now he says, "Hello, my name is Subhanakar Majahardin. Gee, I sure hope I'm pronouncing that correctly." And all it does is it gets everybody in the room to just laugh and smile a little bit, like, oh, this is a good guy. He doesn't take himself too seriously. That's what you're trying to do. How do I connect with people? That's if you ever watch world leaders, anybody that just gives like numbers, they're not going to start with numbers with one another. They're going to talk about, hey, how are your wife and kids? Oh, where are you going on vacation? Those are like those are ways to connect. Like when you and I are talking off camera, like I'm like, oh, you're from New Zealand. We're in New Zealand. I've been to New Zealand. That's just how I'm connecting with. I mean,
Yeah.
I love talking to people. I'm always trying to figure out how do I connect with people. When I first went
Yeah.
to New Zealand, when I went through customs, I looked at the customs agent and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are people here? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I thought every Kiwi was just backpacking around the world. I didn't know anybody actually lived here. And he just laughed. It was a way to connect with them. But that's all I'm trying to do. And again, I like to connect with humor. I'm always trying to figure out what is it that what can bring us together. And so most of my stories you're gonna always hear they're either silly or I'm the butt of the joke, which is fine. I mean, if you're gonna, and that's the thing with humor is I'm not a fan of people that put other people down. The only person I'm ever gonna put down is myself because I think there's a lot of strength in that. This is why I watch a lot of speakers. If people want to know how to get better at speaking, one of the ways is to watch lots of speakers. I mean, I watch 10 speakers a day. I watch politicians. I watch televangelists. I watch comedians. Comedians I learned so much from because they're really good at. Kevin Hart is a short black guy. So he tells a lot of jokes about being a short black guy. Jim Gaffigan's a big fat white guy. So he tells a lot of jokes about being a big fat white guy. What they've done is they've taken their perceived weakness and turned it into a strength. I didn't advise President Biden or President Trump, but if I had advised President Biden, I would have said, make fun of your age. I can't remember anything. I'm so darn old because now people aren't going to make fun of his age. They're going to be like, there's forgetful Joe. He's just like my grandpa, and they relate
Yeah.
to him. If I had consulted with President Trump, I would have said, make fun of your humility. Nobody is humbler than me. I'm the most humble person on the planet. By taking your perceived weakness and making fun of it, you've actually turned it into a strength, and
Yeah.
people love you for that. Same thing. We're working with a CEO right now. Think about this one, Anthony. The guy, he's a brand new CEO for a Fortune 500 company. He is 35 years old. Now think about that. Think about a 35-year-old CEO at his first board meeting. There's a lot of gray hair in the room, lots of wiser people, and he has to connect with them. The way he connected with them, we said, hey, you got to talk about how you've been working since you were 12 years old. And when you started your first company, you started down here and you worked your tail off and stuff. That's how you connect with people is showing, hey, I got here through a lot of hard. It's just like when you were talking about, I've done 250 episodes of this podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. I mean, I, that just baffles me. I'm like, look at that consistency, and you're just such a role model now to people. Like, if he can do it, what he did is he showed up. I mean, that's the old saying. It's the start that stops most people, and showing up is very important. So now I'm just going around in circles, but
Yeah.
there's The answer to your short question, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, look, what you just explained is that, you're breaking the ice with people. You're using like I said, you're using your weaknesses and to make fun of it to actually connect with people, right? And there'll be people that are listening, they'll be going, yeah, well, that's me, and they can, like I said, they can relate. So I totally agree with you. Why do people remember the story long after, like, they forget the numbers? I guess that's made them feel there's got emotion in it, right?
Yeah.
Would that yeah,
Well, I always love the numbers because I'm like, who came up with that number? Show me how you can prove that number. It's like, oh, you most of 80% of communication is nonverbal. I'm like, how do you know that? Where is actual data? I mean, it's a nice thing to say, but I'm like, where's the data on that? But with storytelling, this is right. I was on a Christian podcast the other day, and I was making the point. I love reading the Bible because Jesus makes me laugh the whole time. He's the most frustrated teacher in history. He's got these 12 dense guys around him all the time. He's always telling them stuff, and they never get it. He's like, all right, let me tell you a story. And so I bet you 9 out of 10 non Christians are familiar with the story of the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son and David and Goliath. But I also bet you 9 out of 10 Christians cannot tell you the 10 Commandments. And the reason is the 10 Commandments wasn't presented as a story, it was presented as a PowerPoint slide with 10 bullet points for you to memorize. And people don't remember things like that. They do remember those stories. And that's, you know, and it gets back to your question earlier when you were talking about, well, how can you use numbers and stories? I'm like, well, what you do is you turn the number into a story. So going into another political example, but during Vietnam, when Bob McNamara was the Secretary of Defense, when he would say we killed 100,000 people today, he'd say, "Oh, we killed the population of Auckland, New Zealand." Like that, that now becomes a story in your mind. Like, oh, we decimated, and I'm like, wow, that's actually a smart way of doing it. And when we're working with the financial services people, they're always giving percentages. I'm like, well, I don't think percentages mean as much to people as actual dollars. Let's use actual dollars if you're going to use an example. You can say, like in a bear market in the stock market, you're going to lose 41% of your investment. Or you can say, during a bear market, let's say you go to bed with $1 million. How would you like to wake up with only $590,000? Well, now that's like, and you can even go further. 500, like the equivalent of a home. You've just lost a home,
yeah,
starter
yeah,
home, or like that's what you're doing. Is what can I do to make this number meaningful to people? Or because
yeah,
think about like watching a basketball game. When I watch basketball games, I'm always amazed because I'll say, "Oh, there's the short guy," and then I find out that the short guy is 6'6", but compared to 7 footers, he looks short. I'm like, "Ow." He's actually not short at all. It was just what I was comparing it to. So somebody had to guide me on that. Is you know, where's the perspective of that? How do I make this meaningful?
yeah. I clicked when you said that because, like, when consultants and people are going into businesses and talking about return on investment, if you start talking about percentages, they're not going to get it. But like, if you give a dollar amount, and then they're going to, oh, okay, because that has an emotional connection to it as well, right? For someone listening who has a great business or great idea but feels like no one's listening, what is one practical step that they can take to sharpen their message?
Like I said, that one way you get better at speaking is watching other people speak. The other way, I've had lots of wonderful mentors and coaches. One of my mentors was a guy by the name of Jim Rohn, and Jim used to say, "You can't pay other people to do your push-ups." Translation: you got to get out there and speak. If you want people to know your story, you got to get out there and show your story. I mean, look at you with the podcast. I was on a podcast the other day, and the guy was telling me, he's like, for the first 8 years of his podcast, he had less than 100 subscribers. And that was year 9. All of a sudden, it jumped up to 500,000. But you don't get the 500,000 until you had those 8 years of stagnancy. Same thing with a
Yeah,
lot of companies. a lot of companies aren't these overnight successes. I mean, yeah, all of us want to invest in SpaceX now. Sure, nobody wanted to invest in SpaceX when it was losing hundreds of millions of dollars. So the people that I mean, you got to get going. You got to get out there and share your story. And this is why I love listening to your podcast. This is why I love reading lots of books, because I can't think of many successful people that just succeeded just like that. They went through a lot. I mean, Max Levchin has one of my favorite quotes of all time, and I always butcher the quote, so I'm going to paraphrase. He's like, "My first company was a total disaster. My second company wasn't much better. Number three, we were starting to get right. Number four almost didn't fail at all. Number five was PayPal." I'm like, well, if it only takes you four failures before you find $1 billion company, you're doing.
Mm,
But
yeah,
that motivates me. I want to hear about people. Look at Sarah Blakely with Spanx. I mean, she's one of the most inspirational stories on the planet because she created Spanx. She gets the deal with Nordstrom's, and Nordstrom's only puts Spanx in 8 stores in different locations in America. So she calls her friends that live in these different cities. She's like, "Go buy them all out. I'll pay you, but I'll buy them all out." So we increased. I mean, I just think that's a fantastic story. I mean, she's a self-made billionaire, but she worked her
yeah,
tail off to get there, and she
yeah,
didn't start Spanx. She started off with lots of other ventures that she failed at. But sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, like John Maxwell says. And what she was doing, she was never failing. She learned, oh, this is not what I'm good at. This is what I'm good at. And my next venture, I'll get a little bit better by using this.
yeah. So it's a learning to understand, getting the clarity of where what's working, what's not working. Also, being able to pivot when something's not working, and then being consistent. And I remember when I first started listening to the mindset mentor Rob Dyer, his podcast. He said it took 5 years for his one
Mhm.
to go up. Right? He said podcasting is like a bamboo tree. You water it and you water it and you water it, and nothing happens, and then all of a sudden it just takes off,
Yeah.
right? So I started posting on YouTube 6 months ago, right? Public all my episodes. Before that, it was always Spotify, and it wasn't doing so well on Spotify. It's still not doing that great on Spotify. But 6 months ago, I started on YouTube. I now have 469 followers and 82,000 views in 6 months.
Great.
And I'm like, well, okay, but all I'm doing is I'm just being consistent. And the more I just can continue to post and continue to, and then I can look at and go, okay, well, what's working? What are people actually liking? What are they not liking? What do I need to do more of? Right. So that gives me information that I can then use to be able to go, okay, well, this is,
What I love about what you're saying, Anthony, though, is that consistency. I mean, I'm going to toot my own horn here. I just spoke in Montevideo, Uruguay, and the woman that booked me, she's been on my email list for 11 years. I'm like,
wow.
wow, it took 11 years to make her a customer. But then I thought, hey, good for me, is I didn't give up. I kept on giving, giving, giving. And finally, uh, I don't believe the answer is ever no. I believe the answer is not yet. Sometimes people just aren't ready.
Yeah. And, an interesting thing was when I started doing podcasting, I used to have to go chasing guests. Like I was looking for guests, right? I would say in the last year and a half, I have not had to go looking for guests. People come straight to me. And I'm just looking at my guests. As of yesterday, I had 51 guests in my pipeline. Now I've got 58 guests. So overnight, I've had 8 guests booked already. So I can see that it's working, right? But it's that consistency. It's that showing up. It's getting in front of people. People talk to other people and say, hey, this is a person you should go and have a conversation with. But like for me, every single conversation I'm having is I'm learning I'm learning from you because when I set out to do this, I'm like, how can I learn from the most amazing people in the world who have done this? Podcast, have conversation. I love having conversations. I started to listen more instead of talking more. And on that note, I'm going to ask you a question so that I don't have to talk so much. Okay, so what is the first thing that people should do tomorrow morning?
First thing, we'll get up, make a plan. You can't get to your destination if you don't know where your destination is. I'll quote the movie What About Bob? It's baby steps. Is too many people are overwhelmed with the big picture. I'm like, well, don't look at the big picture. Look at what can you do today. The book that changed my life was Essentialism by Greg McKeown. You don't have to read it if you haven't read it, because I've already read it. There was one line in that book that totally changed my life, Anthony. He said, in Greek, the word priority can only be used in the singular. That changed my life because every day I give myself one priority that I have to get done, not two, not three. One priority that I have to get done. I can get more done, but I have to get the priority done. You'll be amazed how much more productive you are when you give yourself one specific priority every single day. So that would be what I would suggest to people is get one thing done tomorrow, and then the day after, get another thing done. Just that's how you do. You
Yeah.
build up that momentum.
Momentum. Yeah, absolutely. And you can add more, stack more later on if you want. But if
Mhm.
you focus on getting the one thing done in the morning, then you can add more things to it as well. And last question before we go into the quick fire questions is, how can they stay authentic while they're growing their influence?
Well, I mean, again, you want to just talk about, I'm a big believer of talking about your failures is the most important thing. Let's talk about you don't nobody wants to be around the guy that's like, "Oh my gosh, my shoes are too tight because of all the diamonds inside of them, and I got $100 bills falling out, and I'm married to a super." This is why I hate social media. I can't stand social media is because people always present the best version of them. And to me, it's a lot like if you go on the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland, you start off in this room and you look and there's all these paintings, and then the room starts going down, and all of a sudden the woman that's smiling with a parasol turns out she's on a tight wire above an alligator that's about to eat her, and the guy that's smiling so cheerfully, he's sitting on a barrel of dynamite. I'm like, that's social media. People are making, oh, this is I'm doing I've seen so many people that are giving me $1 billion secrets. I'm like, I don't know if they're actually a billionaire. And there's nothing secret about it if you're posting on social media all the time. The people I know that are the most productive avoid it altogether. They have somebody running their social media.
Yeah, awesome. Danny, I've really enjoyed this, and I'm sure that the listeners have as well. It's been a really fun conversation. If people are wanting to get in touch with you, or they want to book you for your speaking, or join your program, how can they do so? Tell us how people
Well, I
can get
need
in
to
touch.
practice what I preach, Anthony. And so I did want to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestorymap.com. Again, freestorymap.com. What that's going to do is it gives you the opportunity to book a complimentary 30-minute phone call with me where we can go over your well crafted story. What this is 30 minutes where I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions so we can get clarity on how to create your well crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of where should I put this story and what story should I use in my presentation. And what this means is the peace of mind that I now have an actual system to convert my audiences into clients. You can get that at freestorymap.com. And I'm just so grateful to you for all that you're doing, Anthony. I've had a lot of fun.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And if people want to get in touch with you, aside from the free giveaway, how can they do so as well, or
Again,
follow you?
choices confuse and cause you to lose. So I promise
Yeah.
you, go to Free Story Map. That'll put you on some email list that you'll be on my list for eternity, like the poor woman in Uruguay.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So to make it easier for everyone, there's there's going to be things in the show notes, but there'll be on the Champion Mindset Collective Hub. There will be a page dedicated to this episode. Everything you need to know is on that one page. You can go and find the links. You can go and watch the videos. You can read the article. You can download a practical guide that will summarize and can give you concise steps on what we've been talking today. So go to that one page, and we'll put that into the show notes. All right, quick fire questions. 6 questions, short answer. It could be a single word or a short sentence. And the
All
first
right.
question for you is, how do you define success, and has that definition evolved for you over time?
Freedom.
Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
My parents, they're good people, and I wish they were still with us.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
Social media is the root of all.
If you could go back and give young Danny some advice, what would it be?
No regrets. I don't go back, but all the bad things that happened, it's kind of like when I meet God one day, he's going to be laughing, saying, "Oh, when you were at your lowest, I knew what I had in store for you." That's what I'd be telling younger
Yeah.
Danny.
What is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
This is going to be long because this is the same message. Whether I was teaching my little ones or my older ones as they exited my classroom for the day, they always had to hear me say the same refrain. I said, "Remember, education is valuable, but execution is priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are two very different things. So let's go out, do the right thing, and make this world a better place."
And the last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
A champion mindset means that you bring a lot of other people along for the successful ride. I don't think you're a champion if you're solo. Leaders breed leaders.
100%. Danny, I've really enjoyed this chat. It's been great, and we'll get you back for some more episodes, and who knows what else we can do together. And it's got me thinking about how often we complicate things, and we're trying to share so much out there to create an impact, and that's what kind of keeps us stuck as well. So, in a world full of AI noise, just being clear and honest is what actually builds trust. My big takeaway is that one problem, one action rule is a great reminder to stop trying to say everything at once and just focus on one thing that helps people move forward. Danny, thank you for joining us today on the Champion Mindset Collective and keeping it real. If you're listening to this episode and so you got something out of this, I encourage you to share this with one other person that could benefit from this as well. And everything we talked about is going to be on that one page on the Champion Mindset Collective Hub, and you can get all the information there. Lastly, I just want to say thank you. And you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.